It's great to be back after a week and a half of international football. After seeing some nations that are definitely favorites for this World Cup. But after a week of seeing the competition on what is to come for this World Cup 2026, a new form of World Cup, more teams. But we finally have our last five because there's still one spot that has to be decided, and that will be between Iraq and Bolivia. But this World Cup finally is mostly decided on the teams that will be playing this World Cup. And for those that don't know, esto es pase ambidiestro, ambidextrous pass, fútbol honestamente, soccer, football honestly. But the World Cup qualifiers have been decided. But we're going to start and we're going to dive into this in the path one, in the first path for this intercontinental playoff tournament. We have DR Congo, who have qualified to this World Cup. Axel Tuanzebe scored a dramatic goal in the extra time winner in the 100th minute to send the Leopards to the World Cup. Jamaica, on the other hand, they had efforts, but they just fell short in Guadalajara, where this game took place in neutral ground for both countries, leaving the African nation to claim the spot before the last spot in this World Cup. That's for path one. For path two, again, we have Iraq and Bolivia that will be playing in Guadalajara, and these two nations will face off to decide the very last remaining spot in the 48-team World Cup. 48-team World Cup. Iraq is seeking its first qualification since 1986, while Bolivia aims to return for the first time since 1994. We're talking about two teams that have not been in the World Cup for at least 20 to 30 years. This is the last match that will be decided in Mexico. But for the European playoffs, the European qualifier playoffs, we saw chaos. We saw chaos happen for at least a nation that has been full of greats, has been full of quality, of great players, 4-time World Cup champions. Italy, who was on the way to path A, is not going to be in this World Cup for the third time in a row. A 4-time World Cup winner will not be in this 2026 World Cup. 3 World Cups in a row, Italy has not been able to qualify. Italy lost on penalties in a game that was tied 1-1 against Bosnia. A final penalty shootout that ended up 4-1 in favor of Bosnia, for those that don't know. In a massive upset, Bosnia held the former champions of the World Cup to a draw and just to take it to overtime, to take it to the penalties. The clinical performance in the penalty shootout secured their second ever World Cup appearance and eliminated Italy. That brings to the topic of what is going on with Italy. What is going on with Italian football? I have said it many times. I have said it before, and I will keep saying it again. Italian football doesn't lack the technicality. What Italian football lacks is the intensity with the technicality. These players that represent Italian football don't lack the technicality, but they lack the intensity. If they really want to compete, they need to be more intense. They need to feel and behave like they are going into a war in the field to be able to bring this Italy, who is one of the greats in the World Cup stage. They have not been able to qualify for 3 World Cups in a row. Where does that put Italian football? Italian football has been in a decay. For those that watch Serie A, for those that follow Serie A, you can agree that Italian football has been on a decay. Players have quality in the Italian league. There is quality. But Serie A, Italian football, lacks intensity. There's only a few players in the Italian squad that give you the sense of world-class footballers. Donnarumma is definitely one of them. He is one of the reasons why this game was able to be maintained 1-1 and not lose on the regular time. Donnarumma is one of the reasons. It has been a full generation where this Italian team has not been able to qualify to the World Cup. This Italian team is able to win the Euro, go through all these great nations that play football in Europe, win the Euro, but not able to qualify for the World Cup. What is the problem that Italian football faces? Is intensity in the game. Quality there is, but intensity for the game, to understand that they are playing a game that matters, is a death match. Italy had its few opportunities. Sadly, things happen in the game. This is football. Things like these do happen. Bastoni gets a red in this game against Bosnia, and Italy is left with 10 men. Italy tried to contain the pressure. They tried to contain the pressure. But at the end of the day, Italy cracked under pressure. Bosnia took them all the way to extra time, and Italy was able to take them to penalties. But when it came down to the penalties, Italy just lacked. Should have put players that are technically seniors in this Italian national team, but they decided to put the younger players to step up and take responsibility. That is a conversation to be held with the main manager, who is Gattuso, why he made that decision, or did the players make that decision? But it's something that makes you question, where is Italian football heading? They have been able to win the Euro, but they are not able to compete on the qualifiers to qualify for a World Cup that includes 48 teams. What is going on with Italian football? Again, technicality is there, quality is there, but intensity lack intensity. Italian football, when you watch it, there is talent, there is technicality, there is quality, but it's slow. It's really, really slow. Italian clubs cannot compete with Spanish clubs, with English clubs. They cannot compete because their football is too slow. Technicality, the quality, the talent is there, but their football is too slow. They don't compete with intensity. You cannot get on the world stage and compete without intensity. You lack intensity, that will leave you out as a contender. Italy sees themselves through a stage where they need to resuscitate. Something has to be done. Something has to be done in the Italian football federation. Something has to be done so Italian football can once again bring the class that we saw in the 90s, in the 80s, early 2000s. You cannot compare the current players that you have in this Italian team to the players there were in the early 2000s. You cannot simply compare them. There was class. There was this sense of you saw certain players step onto the pitch. In certain nations, I can tell you, they felt frightened by this Italian team in the early 2000s, early 90s. They felt that fright. But right now, there's no, they don't transmit a feeling to the opponent like, okay, this team has that vibe of, okay, they are here for business and business strictly to get the results they need and get out. Italy, and not only Italy, not only the national team, but the Italian federation itself, the sequence of events on how it has gotten to this point shows you that Italian football is dead. They are not in a stage to compete. The league, those few clubs that represent Italian football cannot compete at European level. Champions League, what did we see this year? Juve out, Inter out, and Atalanta, they got manhandled by Bayern. They got manhandled by Bayern, who scored 11, 12 goals in 2 matches against Atalanta, the only team that was able to go into the round of 16. Italian football needs to be rejuvenated in the sense of not players, but what is their equation? What is the format to better the game? What can they do to make these players step onto the next level to compete and put the nation on a better stage? 3 World Cups, that's a whole generation of players. We're talking about players that got into this Italian team, never saw the World Cup, retire. New players have come, never saw the World Cup, or at least was able to compete for the World Cup, retired, and it's happening again. The cycle for this Italian team is happening, and it's not great because Italy again is one of the greats who have competed in the World Cup stage, and they have gave some of the best performances against other big nations like France, like England. But right now, Italian football needs to be resuscitated, rejuvenated. A new equation needs to be created, a new format for this organization, for the federation, for the league. Something has to change. And it's not all on Gattuso. Gattuso is a passionate person. Back in the day, for those that seen Gattuso, seen him play, you can tell he's a passionate player. He gave everything he had on the field. And I believe he's a passionate manager. But if the players cannot convince themselves that they can do it, Gattuso cannot convince them, because he's definitely giving that energy. He's trying to convince them that you are capable of doing this. You are capable of taking us to the World Cup and show our faces in the World Cup. But if Gattuso is not able to convince them and the players are not able to convince themselves, the job is pretty much done. Italian football at the moment is in a dark stage. It has been a whole generation. Where is Italian football heading? Stale. Very, very stale. No Europe, no Italian club has been competing. The Italian national team has not been competing. And it's just not understandable how you win the Euro and you're not able to qualify to a World Cup that has 48 teams now. Something has been happening in Italian football for about a decade or a decade and a half. There's a lot to be talked, a lot to be looked at, and things have to be fixed. Another World Cup, a huge nation that has history, has made history, and is part of the big nations that define football and define the World Cup. It's sad to see it, sad to say it, but Italian football is dead and it needs to be rejuvenated. The Italian Federation has to look into how can they better their game to compete at the club level in European football and to compete at the national level in European football and World Cup stage. But Italy sees a third time in a row a disqualification from the World Cup. Bosnia secured their second ever World Cup appearance, and great for Bosnia, who has had a crazy amount of history happen in the last few years. But they secure Path A for this World Cup. For Path B, we have a Sweden against Poland, a Poland that loses, a Sweden that qualifies and goes through, in a score sheet that ended 3-2 in favor of Sweden. This back and forth thriller saw Sweden be ahead twice and secure their plane to the North American World Cup. A late winning strike in Stockholm sparked wild celebrations as Sweden claimed the Path B ticket. A late strike that came from Joketic, who started slow this season at Arsenal, but has been contributing in the last third of the season. And this time, he is the big man who sends Sweden through. And they are in the World Cup claiming Path B. Poland, on the other hand, for those that watch this game and for those that, follow on social media, everything that goes on with football, seems like Lewandowski has hang his shirt for the Polish national team. A great player, a generational player for the Polish talent coming up, for the Polish people in general. A player that, in my opinion, I believe he was snubbed from the Ballon d'Or. But in my mind, he was the Ballon d'Or winner during COVID. Moral of it is he was snubbed. He was snubbed, whether some people like it or not. Lewandowski had an amazing season when the whole world was going through COVID. And he was snubbed from having a Ballon d'Or. The Polish captain gives the sensation like he's hanging his boots and his jersey for the Polish national team. Sweden goes through and they claim the Path B ticket. Then for Path C, we have a Kosovo against a Turkey. A Turkey that won as visitors 1-0. Turkey relied on their veteran core to stifle Kosovo's explosive attack and ground out a narrow victory. A really tight game, only one goal. The win ensures that the Crescent Stars return to the world stage after a clinical defensive display. And we will see a Turkey in this World Cup that they claim Path C. Then last, for the European qualifiers, we have Path D that was claimed by Czech Republic in a game that ended 2-2 on regular time. But on 2 penalties, Czech Republic won 3-1 on the penalties. Another grueling 120-minute draw. Czech Republic displayed nerves of steel to win their second consecutive shootout of this playoff qualifier for the World Cup. This victory completes the European qualifying field, with Czech Republic heading into the 2026 tournament. So for Europe, we have Czech Republic, Turkey, Sweden, and Bosnia. Those 4 nations from Europe are qualified for the World Cup. And these are the groups. This is what the groups are looking like. One last spot, one last team. Iraq against Bolivia will be the ones that will define this World Cup that has 48 teams. In a World Cup that is 71 days away. A lot of political controversy surrounding this World Cup and a lot of economical controversy on the pricing surrounding this World Cup. But a World Cup that would definitely produce views, more money, and more competition. But in my opinion, a World Cup that will get more competitive after, you could say, the first round from the group stage. Why do I say that? Because there will be matches that certain nations will dominate. So the group stage, yes, you're going to have 1 or 2 matches that some nations will grind out. But after the group stage goes on, and after that first round, the second round will be where we'll be seeing the competition actually happen. Yes, it's a lot of nations, 48. Not every nation has the same quality of football, let's be honest. Not every nation has the same quality of football. So that will definitely put a advantage for certain nations that will be facing those nations that don't have much quality. The group stage will not be as attractive. After the group stage, maybe we'll be seeing some games that will definitely give attraction for the viewers. But then after that first stage, that's when we'll be seeing a lot of competition happen. A World Cup that, as we know, will be played all over United States, in some places in Mexico, and some places in Canada. But overall, again, this World Cup has set up new standards. Will some standards be met? Yes. Will some standards be questionable? Of course. It's just part of a new journey that has been taken by this World Cup. So it would definitely create questions. It will definitely create doubt. But more than anything, it will be something new to look at. It will be something to pursue after the World Cup is done. We'll be see where this goes. And when it comes to the Premier League, we have had, of course, some news. We have had some things going on. This has been mainly past week and a half, 2 weeks of international football, the playoffs for the World Cup. Some of these nations we see, France, it looks good. England, in my opinion, still can do better. A nation that has some of the best football, if not the best football, they look like they lack something. And it's not technicality, it's not intensity. It's something that has to come from the players as a unit, as a team. something that takes every single one of the 11 players that play and start. They have to work together. England has too much quality to not be able to go to the quarterfinals, semifinals. And some of the other nations that we can look at is Argentina. They don't look as secure at the moment. Maybe when time comes around or they play a few more friendlies, it gets better for them. In Spain, personally, one of my favorites. I believe that Spain has the quality and is one of those teams that's able to manage the tempo, the energy, the game in itself in general. Um, Portugal has great midfield. Portugal, I believe, is just missing a little bit more clinical forwards. We know we have Cristiano Ronaldo. What situation would that display? Will the manager of Portugal bench Cristiano Ronaldo, or will he let him play the whole time? Ronaldo's a player that can definitely make change, but how will it affect Portugal not having him on the field, and how will it affect Portugal at the same time having him on the bench? How will it affect Portugal having him on the field and not having him on the field? It's a player that, if yes, we know it's not the same Ronaldo, but it's a Ronaldo that can still make a difference. Then we have Croatia, who has always been competitive in the last 2-3 World Cups. They have been second, third. So Croatia is definitely there to compete. Japan, another nation that has been making uprise and surprises, who surprised England. Japan, I believe that they have been on the come up. They have been competing. They are the ones who, to a degree, um, control the Asian continent when it comes to football. But lately, Japan has been on the come up. Japan has created some bowlers, and against England, a major powerhouse of football, winning 1-0 makes you question, did Japan play better, or did England just lack? Which one is it? And I think it's both. I think Japan played well, and I believe England can do better. So they did lack to a degree. Again, an English team that has the quality, has the intensity, but there's something else missing, something that has to come collectively from each of the individuals that make this a starting 11. And finally, the US national team, which who is I support, makes me question what type of mentality and energy do this team brings. A lot of these players that are in the national US national team, they play in Europe. They know what it is to be playing under intensity, with quality, technicality. And for the forwards, they know what it is to be clinical. But the USA that plays against Belgium, a Belgium that had a great game against the US national team, a Belgium that displayed their quality, but makes you question, where is the United States actually heading when it comes to football? A United States that played against Portugal, a game that ended 2-0. Not bad, not bad for the US, but the US is lacking something too. We know it's not technicality, we know it's not talent, but it's the will to fight for each other, to be a team, to leave it all on the field. The US should be at least top 15, top 10. Why? The US is a melting pot. If we look at all those nations in Europe that are melting pots, there are usually nations that compete at a high level and they have the quality and they show to get to the final stages of major tournaments. France is a melting pot. Spain is becoming a melting pot. Portugal is a melting pot. And yes, you have other nations where they're strictly players from that nation. Players that don't have no other background of parents' nationality or where they come from other nations. But USA is a melting pot. There is plenty of talent to choose from. But in reality, feels like and looks like this team is just missing the connection of what is to be a team and to fight for each other on the field, to leave everything. USA has no reason to not be top 10, top 15. The US, Mexico, and Canada are hosting this World Cup. The US should definitely be able to compete. They should be more than able to compete. But we have seen amazing friendlies, something that is letting us know what we're able to see. We have seen the qualifiers. Sadly, we won't see one of the great nations of, so we know, Italy in this World Cup due to problems that are going on in Italian football. But if the federation wants to ignore them, then that's the first problem. But there's much more under that they have to look at to bring Italian football back. We see a France that displays great football, a France that went on to the final of the last World Cup and played well, a France that, for me, is one of the favorites. Might not be my favorite, but is definitely one of the favorites. A Spain that is playing very well, again, definitely one of my favorites. I believe they will get far. Portugal, definitely one of the contenders I'll choose. Definitely will go far. Croatia cannot be taken out of that equation. Definitely will go far. Netherlands also, another team that has a talent, but they need to get a little bit more together and actually execute what the manager is asking from them. We know that the European nations, the known European nations that have a lot of known players, are usually the nations that compete, and they compete with intensity. South America, same thing. But in South America, it's more of a physical and mental game. How can I physically get you out of the game and hit you mentally? That's what South American football is. Central American football is physical, not too technical, but more physical. And we'll be seeing this display in this World Cup. But European nations and South American nations are usually the nations that are favored in this World Cup. But we will be seeing a display of talent coming on. A World Cup that is 71 days away. Some nations will be playing 1 to 3 more friendlies. But it has been great for this week. But this is all for today. This is all for this World Cup. Thank you for those that are usually here with me. And for those that don't know, esto es Pase Ambidiestro, Ambidextrous Pass, Fútbol Honestamente, Soccer, Football Honestly. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Thank you. Have a good one.